Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Empire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone. Phew! Oh boy. The Caps could give you a heart attack in game one, huh? Game one heart attack. Huh. Okay.
I mean, are we surprised? What did I say to you yesterday? It should be Caps in 5, but it'll be Caps in 6 because we know what this franchise does in the playoffs.
Yeah. I know you guys want me to start with the football. I will. I just had to get that out, and we're going to spend time talking about the Capitals later. Callow texted me in the middle of the game going like, see, we're blowing them out. Only to it took every ounce of me not to text you back after they scored the second goal and go, you were saying,
I've just never seen them dog walk a team physically like that. You have to agree with me on that. Like, they were just hitting the crap out of them last night. So I still stand by what I said. It just happened to, fall apart in 10 minutes, which is what happens in the NHL playoffs. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So all's well that ends well. They win, and we'll talk about Ovi in a little bit too. And that was a first. I can't believe that was a first. So we'll talk about all that stuff a little bit later. All right. Let me get back into the football. We're just a couple days away from the draft, and I was having this long conversation with John Keim yesterday because we were just kind of going through what he thinks going to happen, what I think's going to happen. Not for his show. We were just shooting the you know what, and it's just started to just dawn on me that they really have a choice here. And you just take best player available or whoever they like. And in this case, I saw somebody tweet something out. I think Howie Roseman said that this is the Baskin Robbins draft. It's like 31 flavors. What do you like? And I think that's a pretty good way to look at it, that everybody's going to have a different opinion of something they like. There's just kind of no obvious choices with the exception of the first couple at the top of the draft, namely Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, that there are people that don't even think Cam Ward should be drafted basically as high as he's going to be. But there's only a couple of clear-cut, obvious, no-brainer. You've got to pick this person. They're going to be good NFL players. And so they're calling this the Baskin Robbins draft. What's your favorite flavor? Go out and go for it. And by picking 29 and something like that, I think it's because we've gone through this for so long, it's kind of impossible to figure out which direction they're going to go. But the more I think about it, I think there's a truism here that exists that's permeated throughout the offseason that I think is leading me to where I think they're going to go, which is there's always this mantra of just take best player available, outside obviously of clear things that you don't need. Like, they wouldn't take a quarterback right now, but outside of that, they could take literally anything else. Or in this case with Washington at 29, do you take best player available or immediate impact player? And this is where I've kind of landed on this now. This team believes it can win a Super Bowl immediately. I don't think they're wrong. I know that's biased and everything, but they were in the NFC Championship game a year ago. Jaden Daniels, as we were talking about yesterday, it's possible he might get better. And then off of all the things that he actually said, where it would lead you to believe last year is last year, I'm moving on. You need to too. They went and go get a Pro Bowl left tackle. They went and go get a Pro Bowl receiver. They believe this as well. This may not feel like Houston, but there's some aspects of it. Remember a year ago when they got Stephon Diggs, they got a couple of others, and people went, they're going all in. They're trying to win now. That exists here, I think, for this team. And they believe their window is wide open. So for me, at this point, I don't know that it's necessarily best player. They're going to say it's both. But I'm more inclined to believe that the person they're picking at the top, wherever that is, whether it's 29 or trade back, is not necessarily best player available. It's immediate impact player. That I think is the direction that they're ultimately going to go, which is why I'm more inclined to believe in a couple of position groups as the spots that they're going to go for on Thursday night.
Well, I think you just hit it on the head there with position groups. I think because they have so many positions that they do actually simultaneously need, and there could be players there, I think that's where I've landed too is, well, you could take an immediate impact player because they need so many different positions at this point. I'm not saying they're like desperate, but like edge rusher's number one. But if they take literally corner, safety, interior offensive lineman, wide receiver, running back, we'd all be happy with that, I think, because they kind of just need to add at all of those positions. So I think it's a combination of the two. Like they could take whoever the best player is at the top of one of those positions, and it's a little bit of both. I think it's just because, once again, the story of the last couple off seasons has been the roster turnover. There is not only a turnover that's going to happen for probably in the next year or two again, but also the contracts don't stretch out either. So I've basically looked at this as they could go to a bunch of different directions because the roster is once again dictating that they could do that.
But let me go through some of this. So let me put this guy's name up real quick. Adam Schefter name checks a linebacker out of UCLA by the name of Carson Schlesinger. He's been rising up boards in a draft where everybody's got their own opinions about players. We're seeing a lot of this movement right now on guys that weren't getting a lot of hype early. I will tell you, this is a name that I heard weeks ago. So when I saw him name check him and say, this is a possibility for the Commanders, it rang as very true. But I want to take him as an example here. So if you're going to take best player available, let's just say that they agree with this. And I don't know that to be true, but they believe that he might be best player available for them at number 29. Are they going to take somebody who doesn't figure to play immediately for them? They're not benching Bobby Wagner. That's not happening. So when I saw his name pop up, okay, so here's someone who I've heard them talk about for a couple of weeks. So here's someone that I believe when I saw, especially when Schefter reports it, I'm like, okay, this person could be linked to them. But then I look at him and I go, all right, if they think he's the best player available, they think he's an impact player. Is he an impact player now? And it goes back to this idea of, if you think you can win right now, why would you select someone who probably isn't going to play very much early? Sure, he could be the heir apparent to Wagner in a year, but if you are in the mode of we can win right now, why would you use your first round pick on somebody who probably isn't going to play very much, even if you like him? So he's the prime example, I think, of what I'm trying to get at here, which is I'm not totally sure that they're going to go quote unquote best player available. I think they may go best player available at a position group that plugs in immediately and starts. That's what I think is happening.
No, I agree 100%. I think that's what I was getting at here. I saw this one yesterday too, and I said, not only that, he's not going to play over Wagner. They also have, Luvu in tow too. There's actually two pretty good linebackers here. And I go back to what I was saying yesterday and where I've landed with the way that they're building this team is, well, if you draft a linebacker, how much is the impact of drafting a linebacker, even if he played? And in today's NFL, it's not insane, right? So I think what's happening here too is they're saying, what position can we actually take that will impact things? And that's why I keep leaning. I'm not going to be surprised if they go wide receiver or running back here, because if they beef up the offense a little bit more, it's a bigger impact overall. So I'm with you. I agree. I think they're going to take best player available, but at the position that they do actually need, that they need some depth for a little bit too.
Yes. So let's start going through position groups then, and what actually makes sense for an early pick. All right. I'm not talking about anything on day 2, 3, or 4, two or three, honestly. Those days I think are different to me. Those days are truly best player available. You're not expecting plug-in starters. You will probably pick at position. They may select a kicker with their last pick this year because they need to do something like that. They could take a running back later. They could take an edge rusher later, but those are the position groups that you go, once you're picking somebody in the 4th or 5th round, 6th round, you're not expecting to plug them in. I'm talking about early in the draft here. So all along, what have we said? They need an edge rusher. There are a lot of what appears to be very good options there. There are some interesting ones like Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, who may be there at 29. Here's a guy who looks the part, acts the part, has every metric that you like, looks the size, and he had 3 sacks a year ago. And you got to sit there and look at this and go, why does this guy have no numbers? Okay. Mike Green, James Pierce, you're going to hear things that maybe you're not going to love about them off the field as opposed to what you see on the field with them. Really great talent. Okay. How do they feel about them? And then I was talking to Keim about this yesterday, and this is one of those positions that actually rarely does the player turn into a definitive impact player overnight. Edge rusher. They typically become one over time. Now, this may be different for Abdul Carter, or it's different for the Max Crosbys and or Myles Garrett, number 1 pick. That's different. When you bring in a freak onto your team, Micah Parsons, a freak onto your team, no one is looking at those guys and going, that is Micah Parsons, that's Myles Garrett. They may turn into it. That may happen, but I don't think that that's reasonable to believe it. And then I look at what they did in the offseason and I go, all right, like they didn't get their Micah Parsons. They didn't get their Myles Garrett. However, they spent a lot of assets and a lot of time fortifying the defensive line to be better against the run. Do they have someone who's going to get them a lot of sacks, might turn games upside down, do the ball is life stuff? No, I don't think that they do. But to the point of, are you going to select best player available, or are you going to select somebody you could put in and think is an impact player immediately? It's getting me to lean away from edge rusher, honestly, that unless there is an obvious person they love that they thought was going to go number 10 and ended up at number 29, I am less and less inclined to believe that's the direction they're going to go.
No, I couldn't agree more. This is why I've leaned on this kind of offensive philosophy for this first round pick, is that I think whoever they pick there, he might not even start. Like, I don't think that's an outlandish thing to say when you're picking someone that late. I'm with you. Like, the impact that player is going to have could be minimal. I think they're maximizing the potential of that pick. And that's why, once again, I keep leaning towards offense. Or, you have cornerback on the list here. If they get another guy like Mikey Sanders still, if they think can contribute right away, I'll like that and I'll take that pick. But I'm with you. I don't think that there's an edge rusher at the moment that'll make an impact.
Right. Corner. Same thing here. Okay. There are, and I know that there's a couple of corners they really like. There's this, Keim wrote about this corner out of Kentucky that they really like. They've met with numerous times. There's a couple other corners. I saw that they were listed for the guy from Florida State, that he could potentially be there at 29, and they would go that direction. Do they need another corner? Yes. I think as a fail-safe to, let's be honest here. If Marshawn Lattimore is what he was a few years ago, you don't have a problem for 2025. But if Marshawn Lattimore isn't what we thought he was, or let's just say he's not healthy to the point where we expect him to be, they kind of need to have some depth again. That said, Sanders still's a hit. Lattimore, you go and you made your bed with him. You've decided he's one of your starters. You made your bed with him. They just signed Jonathan Jones from New England. Tell me where this corner that you're selecting starts immediately. So you're telling me Jones, Igbenogany, and Sanders still are all slot corners? Like, that doesn't feel totally realistic to me. This is another position group that I go, I don't think that's the direction that they're going to go. Like, again, I'm not going to be surprised by anything. I think everything's open for discussion here. But in trying to figure out which direction they're going to go, like edge, corner feels unlikely to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, once again, I think it's all about the impact. Do one of those players have an impact right away as being the first round pick? The answer to me is no. And part of that too is the players that are in front of them too. Like, I also think, I know with this group, like, it's a brotherhood and all this, they want to preach the team chemistry and stuff, but you can't tell me that if they draft a cornerback, that's going to ruffle some feathers in the room, mainly probably Marshawn Lattimore, right? Like, it's almost an admission of, like, we don't think this unit is good enough. I think that would ruffle some feathers if they don't want to, that they're not in the interest of doing that, essentially. So I'm with it. Like, quarterback, edge rusher, I could see it if there is some, like you kind of mentioned too with edge rusher, if there's some stud corner
that was supposed to be, top 10 that they really liked, I'll get it if it ends up falling that far. But once again, if they think they can win a Super Bowl, I think they're staying away from that position group because I think they're trying to add as much as they can right now, as fast as they can too.
Yeah, the selection of Johnny Newton last year was one of those.
Yes.
I don't think they intended to select him when they did, but they were surprised he was available when he was. So for corner or edge rusher, if the specific one that they don't think is going to be there at 29 happens to be there at 29, then I'll understand, I think, the thinking of it. But if you go back to the original premise here, which is I don't think that they're going to take players just to take best available. I think they're going to take best available spot plug-in starter impact player because they think the window's open. Then those position groups don't feel like the right way to go early. What they do in the second round, the fourth round, the seventh round, that's all like that. That's not this discussion. This is the early part of the draft that I think we're talking about, which means the answer feels like running back or offensive line. That's what it feels like to me. I know that like running back has kind of been an off-putting subject for people to take in the first round. But if Travion Henderson is at 29 and it's appearing like that's a possibility, and clearly if Washington is going to make it kind of clear that's a direction they'll go, which they won't because they're very good at subterfuge and staying kind of under the radar just in general, then I think that's where the concern gets that somebody might take him before that gets around to him. This is the trouble that they're in at 29, and I know they don't want to trade up to get a running back or an offensive lineman or something like that. So I don't expect them to really move on something like this. But like if he's there, it's hard for me not to picture that being the pick and being happy about it. And then secondarily, if he's not there, or if, I don't know, Tyler Booker, who might be the best interior offensive lineman, is available to them, or the tackle out of Oregon, who could be a plug-in right tackle and allow Coleman to move inside. If either one of those scenarios play themselves out, that they're either one or both are there, and I'm more inclined to believe in Booker, honestly, that because you got a plug-in left guard if you do that next to Tunsil, Biotish, you wait out Cosme coming back. Coleman is now trying to become the right tackle for you and may become the long-term right tackle for you. Suddenly you have an offensive line that feels very, very, very competitive and potentially high end when Cosme comes back. These are the two spots. Like I've narrowed it down to this is what I think is the most likely, because I think this team believes they're in a window. They're going to look at this pick differently from let's just pick this great linebacker who might play next year, not this year. I think they're going to look at it and go, who can we bring in here that helps us win right now? Immediate impact player. And these are the two position groups that feel like are going to be there at 29 that make sense to me.
Well, and to your point too about like offensive line and kind of comparing it to linebacker, getting depth at linebacker doesn't really help you that much because the jump from one to the next is not going to be that crazy. Whereas with an offensive line, if you get that unit better, right, then you're going to have depth there. You could also add in a sixth lineman whenever you need to, but also go look at that position in terms of an impact. If you make it better overall as a unit, depending on where you slot guys in, that's the way to go. Like, go ask Philly how that worked out for them. They had 6 or 7 linemen that really were all impact type players last year. That's a position that I'm way more privy to just draft the best guy and then figure it out. Like with that position, I'm way more about that life. And when it comes to running back too, I'm with it. Like we talked about it yesterday. The running backs fell off halfway through the year. It went into Jaden's hands almost all of the time from the second half of the season on, mainly because the running game got stagnant. And it was because Eckler got hurt. I don't know what was going on with Robinson, but basically they couldn't rely on it anymore. I'm with it that if you draft a running back that is a home run threat, that is a much bigger and better upgrade immediately than cornerback or edge rusher or one of those positions too. So I'm with it. Yes. I'm going to throw wide receiver out there too. They could draft a wide receiver that steps right in as the third wide out too. So I think I put those two at the same positions of you draft them and they're going to immediately impact the offense.
Yes, I think wide receiver is a possibility. I think it is less likely. I think if it's, again, probably, and I don't know who it would be for them, but a very specific player.
Yeah.
Is it Matthew Golden? Is it this guy from Arizona who nobody thinks is going to be there at 29? Is it, I don't know, Egbuka from Ohio State? I don't know who they love. They're being very, quiet and coy about what they're doing. But whoever it is, again, this is where if they go in one of those directions, what they're going to say afterwards is, we had this guy graded so high, we couldn't turn him down, which goes back to the Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. What's your flavor? And they're going to tell you this was our flavor and he was there and it was impossible for us to turn it down. Assuming that those players are gone by the time it gets around to them, this is why I think these are the directions they're going to go. And I've talked about this for a long time. Like, I believe in the draft. I believe in building through it. And I believe in the inside out mentality. If you build up your lines and you get a good quarterback, everything else comes into place. Go look at the Philadelphia Eagles. Go look at the 49ers the last few years. Go look at the Lions with their offensive line. They and the Eagles got the best two offensive lines in football going right now. Washington, if Tunsil is going to be what he's been throughout the course of his career, Coleman looks like a really good starter somewhere. Cosme is a really good starter when he comes back. Biotish is a really good center. They're a piece away, and they're a piece massive depth behind it. Nick Allegretti as a prime backup to them, Andrew Wiley as a prime backup to them, is a world difference from what they had a year ago when the injuries started to happen. And that's another reason why I'm like, I got no issue with like old Jay Gruden's line of, well, they got me a guard. In this case, if they go and get the best guard and plug this in, and all of a sudden they have an offensive line that people are talking about throughout the league going, watch out. Like, that's actually the strength of the team. Imagine what happens if Jaden has more time. Imagine what happens. So I'm an inside out person, both sides of the line. I think there's a lot of work to do on the other side as well. But like, if they're going to turn those units into strengths, and specifically there's an opportunity to turn the offensive line into what could be a major strength, then I'm all for it, because I believe everything else falls into place when you have protection and you have a pass rush.
No, and I think the argument could be made as well. If we're talking offensive line, running back, wide receiver, whatever, well, they got by with wide receiver last year. They got by with running back. Offensive line did rear its head in the NFC Championship game. Yes, Cosme got hurt, and that defensive line is dominant. But that's a team you're going to have to go through if you want to win a Super Bowl, right? So I'm 100% all in if that's where they end up going with offensive line, because I know it's going to have the impact that, honestly, is counteracting the Eagles' biggest strength right now. I'm completely okay with that if that's the direction they go. And it's not like this big brain think tank thing. They need one more offensive lineman, as far as I'm concerned, to at least bump everyone out to where they need to and be comfortable with the depth. I said this to you last year where I liked a lot of their starters, but right after a guy gets injured, I was worried about the depth, and it did rear its head last year a couple of times.
Yeah, I like when it comes to wide receiver, I'm with you on if the right person is there, could they be an impact player? Yes. But I would argue, and you can argue against this, I don't think they need one now that they got Deebo Samuel in there. Like, I would say, like, I've been harping on this since the end of the season. They need explosive playmakers at any of the skill positions. They're not going to get it at tight end because I don't think there were many available. And again, like, if for some bizarre reason Tyler Warren was there at 29, you don't even think about it. You just take him, but he's not going to be. And outside of something like that, like, they decided they're going to run it back with their tight ends. Zach Ertz, it's a big year for Sinnott, and John Bates. So they're not going to get quote unquote explosive playmakers out of there unless there's a development of Sinnott. Okay, fine. You can't cure you can't cure every position group. They looked at receiver, they got Deebo. They don't need another receiver now, not for a year. They don't need another receiver now. Would it help them? Would it make them better? Sure. But do they need one? No. And if they are going to follow through and make McLaurin a long-term, commander and give him an extension, then they clearly have who they think their number one is for a period of time. This is why it screams running back to me. Whether it's the first or the second round pick, I will be surprised if a running back is not selected by them. It's a depth group in this draft. There are what appears to be difference-making players. You unfortunately don't have a shot to get someone like Genty, but you do at a number of these other players. And you could, if you get the right guy in the first round, hold out for the second round pick or even later. I know they like this guy from Virginia Tech. He's an explosive player. I know that they like this guy from Iowa a little bit. And then for me, I've been talking about Travion Henderson since I started watching him after the season was over. And I looked at him and I went, that's the guy. If we can get this guy, it changes things. So I feel like running back I'm more inclined to believe that that's what's going to happen on Thursday if they are going to go skill position player.
I think the argument here too, at least for wide receiver, is look, Luke McCaffrey, I would call his year fine. Like we saw a couple of plays from him, but I also think he was a little all over the place as a returner on special teams to playing wide receiver a little bit. But the other thing here too is that I think people are underrating is like they brought in Wes Welker to help Debo, but I also think he's going to help him too a little bit. So let's see if, McCaffrey develops a little bit. Like there's, a couple bullets in the chamber, so to speak, when it comes to the wide receiver group that I think they're going to be okay there. And as you mentioned too, you said it before I could, if they somehow get a development out of Ben Sinnott and he becomes an impact guy and just becomes good, honestly, it doesn't have to be amazing. If all of a sudden he just starts making an impact, that releases some of the pressure on the wide receivers a little bit too. So like there are some options here that if some things work out, they won't need to take a wide receiver and they could, go ahead and go running back. And I'd be very, very comfortable there.
I think people are forgetting too, Noah Brown is back. He was very good as a number 2. He is now going to slot in as a number 3.
Right.
And they have the big high risk reward thing. They're paying Michael Gallup nothing. They're paying him nothing. They don't owe him anything. And he's got to show up and compete. And if he looks like the player that was in Dallas a few years ago, they've got one of the biggest bargains in the NFL. If he doesn't, oh, well, they tried. No big deal. It's not like they're counting on him to do anything crazy for them anyway. So that's why I go back to they don't, in my opinion, need a receiver for this year, maybe for the long term. But for this year, and if we're talking about windows are open, for this year, they don't need another receiver, in my opinion. Could they use one? Will it make them better? Sure. Do they have other needs that are really like evident now to try to go win in 2025? Yeah, they could use another offensive lineman. They could really use another running back. They could use an edge rusher. They could use a corner. They could use a safety, all of these things. But I'm thinking at 29, you want to get a guy who's going to start because you think you're going to win. Yep. So what position groups are those? That could be offensive line. That could be running back. And I suppose that could be safety or corner. I suppose.
Yeah, it's funny that we are talking about it like this because that's what Ron Rivera did. But Ron Rivera would literally target one player, it seemed, and then would just take that one player. This one, it seems like
love. Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. And this one, it seems like they're at least saying we have 3 position groups, like at the top of the list. We'll take the best one there, and especially the way this draft is going to settle out. They have no idea who's going to be there. But at least if you have a couple different position groups, they can get the impact player that can at least impact that position group.
You hear this every year from every team, but you're going to hear it more this year than any other year. And anybody picking outside of the top 10, every single team is going to pick somebody and say they had them rated higher than where they got them.
That's
Without fail, every single one of them are going to say we had this person rated higher on our board that's why we couldn't pass them up. And that's why this is the all-time, this is eye of the beholder draft, because there are so few obvious people that you're supposed to pick.
Mel Kiper was talking about this on Sportsman like yesterday, and he was basically saying like, oh, I think it was Jordan Renan or Orlovsky or somebody said, oh, well, the Giants have to get their quarterback, whether it's at 3 or they trade back up.
No.
And Mel was basically like, no, this is the draft where you trade back up into the first round. He's like, do I need to remind everybody? The Ravens picked Lamar with the last pick of the first round. If you have your guy, don't overshoot, getting him. Like take credence into the value of getting some of these guys. And he was kind of saying, especially in this draft where everybody's boards are all over the place, don't overdraft guys. This is the draft to not do that, essentially.
Let me take a quick break because I want to actually talk about the quarterbacks next. Bray wants to show ESPN 630 in Sports Capital. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we've just started the NBA and NHL playoffs, which has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB, NHL, and the UFC, Bet Online remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the Bet Online Casino casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and a live casino. Bet online. The game starts here. All right, welcome back. All right, so we left when we left off, we were talking about the quarterbacks for a moment and the Giants with this idea of, because they're a linchpin, they could take Shedeur Sanders at number 3. I don't think they are. I actually think they're going to be wise, and they're going to take Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, one of those two, because they're going to be there, because Cam Ward is going number 1 to Tennessee. So Tennessee, Schefter's already reported today. Tennessee has told basically everybody number 1 isn't going anywhere. We all know it's going to be him. I'd be shocked if it went a different direction, and then they're going to get criticized up the wazoo if they don't. What's really interesting here is, and I've seen this in multiple places, that Cam Ward has been labeled by scouts as would have been number 7 in the quarterback draft class of a year ago. That's not his fault. It just is what it is. This is a weaker quarterback class. That's also a very dangerous thing to do, to make him the number 1 pick when no one thinks that he's Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels or Drake May, or what appeared to be very obvious step in, could be very high level starters. And I think, like we've talked about this, like when we go back and look at this draft class from a year ago in 5-10 years, I think you're going to see something that is historic, because I believe Caleb's going to end up being good. I think Drake May, I was actually a little more surprised how good he was, how quickly he was. Jaden had, in my opinion, the best season any rookie quarterback's ever had. Bo Nix is in the perfect spot. We haven't even seen McCarthy play. And in the limited amount that I saw Penix, I buy him. So this is turning out to be a class that was worthy of all of those picks. And they may be playing each other in the playoffs, for the next 5-10 years. It feels like it's going to be like a historic class. This one doesn't feel that way at all. So to go back to your original, what we were talking about earlier, where Jordan Renan goes on and says the Giants have to get their quarterback. No, they don't. If you, the biggest mistake you can make is go, we have to get a quarterback in a draft class where you don't believe in any of the quarterbacks, and the one you might believe in isn't available to you. So you got to resist that urge as hard as possible. You can't reach and bring somebody in and just go get somebody because you quote unquote need a quarterback. It will set you back years if you're wrong about it.
Yeah, it's one thing to take a shot on somebody, in the second round on. It's another to basically trade back into the first round to get a guy that, honestly, in most other drafts, probably wouldn't touch until the 4th or the 5th round. This is where I think NFL teams, it becomes the most dangerous game if you don't have a quarterback. When you don't have one and then you desperately need one and you take one in a draft like this. Say what you want about Ron. Ron actually resisted a lot of these drafts when they actually really did need a quarterback and they never drafted one high. You could argue they should have, but at the same time, he never fell in love with one of the quarterbacks that they gave up the farm for in one of these bad drafts. This is where you get into very dangerous territory, because then also, this is the other impact of all this. You don't move on fast enough either. That's always my gripe with these kind of quarterback drafts. You hold on and you think, oh, maybe he'll develop. And all of a sudden, it turns into a 4-year saga. Go look at Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones lasted way too long in New York when we all kind of knew he wasn't worthy of that extension, and they finally had to move on messily last year from him.
That's right. The draft is a wreck in this position when you start seeing things like this. There's a lot of late smoke about Jalen Milroe out of Alabama, who I'll just tell you, having, watched a lot of him, I think he's a very good athlete. I don't think he's accurate enough for the NFL. I think this is a classic. This is going to be a very difficult league for him. I think he's going to rely on his legs way too much early, or he's going to end up making a lot of mistakes if they force him to stay in the pocket and don't just let him use his athletic ability. But you're hearing all this smoke about him, including preposterous things that keep people throw out there like he's the best running quarterback outside of Lamar Jackson. No, he's not. Okay. Nobody is that guy. And remember, when Lamar came into the league, everybody was extraordinarily concerned about his accuracy. He is such an elite player running the ball that he has been able to navigate an incredible career using that ability. I think it's unique. And when people actually compare them to him, I would describe him as one of the most unique players I've ever seen. And I don't think there's anyone like him. And I don't think there's anyone coming like him. And I can tell you this much, this guy ain't him. Go watch the collegiate highlights of Lamar at Louisville and then go watch Milroe, and you're not going to see the same thing. Is he a really good athlete? Yes. Is he a player who I think has a shot in the NFL? Yes. Do I think he's going to succeed? No, I don't. Not as a quarterback. And this smoke, all this says to me is this is the relative strength of the quarterback class in general, that they're looking at him and going, okay, let's give him a shot because he does have some athletic abilities that the others do not have. And in the modern NFL, when you have a guy who can move like this, you got a shot, but don't fall for it. And I'm just so happy we're not in this position that we have our guy, because it's the first time, long time, we have our guy. We don't have to worry about it.
No, this is also like that camp going, this draft isn't that strong. Let's see how much money we can make by kind of like getting him higher up on some of these draft boards. This always happens too. There's always a little late run on somebody where somebody tries to jump up the draft board. This is what this is right now. It's the Tuesday before the draft. Of course, somebody's name is popping up like that. Of course it is.
The two teams on Shador look to be right now Pittsburgh and New Orleans. Pittsburgh, is Aaron Rodgers not signing with them because he's not sure he wants to play? Is Pittsburgh saying, let us get through the draft? It could be a lot of everything going on here at one time. They clearly need a quarterback. Mason Rudolph's the only quarterback on their team right now. So they need a quarterback. Does Tomlin love Shador? Maybe. What's his relationship with Dion? Does he think like he's more coachable, or whatever it is? And they're sitting in a spot in the draft where he may just fall to them, or they may move, minorly up to try to get him if he gets past the linchpin, which is the early part of the draft, which I think everybody thinks is going to happen. The other one is New Orleans, which seems to be getting real squirrely. Derek Carr is not a long-term answer for them. Derek Carr is also injured all of a sudden and not really certain he's going to be able to play early in the season. They do need to get a young quarterback. And I will say this, Kellen Moore has worked with Dak and done really well with him, and just worked with Jalen Hurts, and they did really well a year ago. I think that was kind of a too good to fail type of offense that was going on in Philadelphia, and I don't want to take any credit away from Moore, but I mean, that's the best job in football, to have offensive coordinate that group with that offensive line and those players and Saquon and AJ Brown. And all that. You can't ask for anything better to have on your plate than that. But I will say this, if I were Dion and Shador and trying to figure out where do we want to go, I'd want to be with a coach like this that's very open-minded, will have a kind of a more open offense, isn't going to plug in, is going to think about, we're going to do what's best for us. Does Kellen Moore want to run the ball a million times? Probably not, but he did because he had the best running back. So he's open-minded. I actually think this would be a really good spot for him to go. And if Carr can play, sit for a year, learn the offense under Moore, and unleash him when he's ready to go. I think Shador to New Orleans would be actually a very good spot for him.
Yeah, but the chatter, I don't know if you caught up on this. The chatter is that Carr might not play at all next year.
Yes.
So I don't know if you had caught up on that because you were out last week. But I think that's part of the reason why he's linked to New Orleans, is because they kind of just need a quarterback. And I guess if you go that route, you could. I'm privy to say this is best of both worlds for both Pittsburgh and for New Orleans. I think Pittsburgh, he would sit probably and not start right away, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or they do go with Rudolph or whoever they go with there. I think he could sit there, and that's a professional environment. I say this all the time. Some guys just need to learn how to be pros. He would learn how to be a pro there before stepping onto the field. And then with New Orleans, I think that's also a less pressured situation. We know about that market. They're kind of just happy if he makes some plays. So I think both of those fits actually could go well for him, especially because it's not this high pressure environment. I think New York is a disaster waiting to happen.
100%.
3 games in, they're going to be chanting for him, and all of a sudden they're going to have to play him, and he's going to not be good, and then it's going to backfire. I think these two franchises are actually pretty good fits for him.
Yes, I think New Orleans or Pittsburgh, who especially Pittsburgh, who's good every year but doesn't get any play nationally. No one's paying close attention on the day-to-day. I think New Orleans would be a great spot. They're the most underrated, that, and the AFC South and the NFC South are the two divisions that don't really get covered. Nationally, people aren't on top of them. They also don't have the premier players in that division. I think it'd be a good spot for him. New Orleans, he could kind of be undercover. I think he's got the right coach there. Real quickly, I saw this. Seattle's open to trading Sam Howell. Of course they are. I don't know what they would get for him, because in the limited amount that he actually did come in and play, it looked really bad. Remember that? It looked really, really scary bad. We broke him. Bieniemy and Ron broke him. Like this is reminiscent of Patrick Ramsey to me. They brought Patrick Ramsey in. Spurrier broke him. Like they ran an offense that got him killed. And that year with Hal, remember, he looked okay. Like looked like an NFL quarterback, and he got hit so many times he got shell shocked by the end of it. I think we broke the guy. And so I apologize to Sam Howell on behalf of the previous administration here in Washington for putting you through something that clearly you haven't gotten over yet.
Sam Howell's got to be the only quarterback that played behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league and then played behind a worse offensive line when he got his chance in Seattle. Like he was running for his life. So, yeah, I mean, remember, he was top 5 in passing at one point that season.
Right.
Like granted, part of that was the offense because they refused to run the ball for some reason, but he put the numbers up for a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, I'm not as much of a we broke him as much as he was a 5th round pick. Let's be honest here. Like
Bieniemy broke him. He
okay.
did.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go with that. But he also wasn't this top number 1 overall pick or anything either.
That's right. All right. Let me take a quick break. We'll get into the Caps next. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. I couldn't believe this to be true, but it is. Alex Ovechkin scored his first ever playoff overtime game-winning goal. That's considering how long he's been in the league and all the things he's done, like break the record. I couldn't believe that was the case last night. And congratulations to everyone who knew that and made it on the call last night and knew that, because it would never have occurred to me that was actually true, but it was. So what a way to start the playoffs after this season. You want to talk about sports karma. Him scoring the game winner in overtime, a first in his career. Well, like it sounds like the good times are just going to keep on rolling here.
It was funny. John Walton summoned it. Joe B summoned it. Sean McDonough summoned it. Every single announcer I saw mentioned it. And then not only mentioned it, but mentioned it when he was going out there to step into the office, essentially, too. There were 2 stats that I love heading into this postseason, and I mentioned one of them yesterday, but one of them was that Alex Ovechkin did not have an overtime goal. He now has one, and I've mentioned this too. The Capitals have never swept a team in a 7-game series in their 50-year history. And granted, it's like 7-game series, if you remember in the 80s, they used to be 5 games to start things off, so it was a little different, but they've never swept a team either. So it took them 1 game to knock one of those off. And, as far as it went yesterday with Ovechkin, here it is, this team with all of this depth of scoring that they've had all season long. It's Ovechkin with 2 goals and the game winner in overtime. You can't make it up anymore with this guy. It's just, honestly, it's getting to be unreal with him. At 39 years old, they rely on him in game 1 of the playoffs.
Okay, so let's get to the other stuff then. They were dominant through 2.5 periods, really. There was a penalty, power play goal happens, suddenly it's on, late scramble, Thompson gets way out of position.
Yep.
I mean, like it was a late scramble, but he's way out of position and ends up giving up what is a cheapy goal, albeit, that Montreal give them credit for, sticking with it and doing all this. And all of a sudden, here's a 2-goal lead at home vanishes. And fortunately, they end up on the right side of it. But this is the concerning part about, this is where I was kind of walking into this. I get it. Like, that was a very emotional thing that happened at the end of the season. There was just so much buildup. This team had an incredible run. They were able to navigate chasing a record and getting the 1 seed anyway in a year where nobody thought they would be anywhere near a 1 seed. And they accomplished both of those things. And I totally get that they needed to take a big, giant breath, and exhale, enjoy it a little bit and understand that there's nothing to gain with the rest of the regular season. But all of a sudden the foot was so off the gas that I'm like, oh crap, they got to flip the switch again. And this is what concerned me here. Early in the game, it looked like no problem. Don't worry about it.
The switch was flipped. I mean,
this is a mismatch. And then all of a sudden it's the hockey playoffs and nothing's a given. So where are you just in totality of, yes, they won, but there was these aspects of, all right, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought it was going to be. And flipping the switch is not going to be easy to do for this team.
Yeah, but I'd argue they did flip the switch. They weren't just good in the first period. They were killing Montreal. I mean, they were hitting everything that moved. If my concern level is a 1 through 10, I'm at a 2. I'm serious. I'm not worried about what happened in the last 10 minutes last night. One of the goals was a power play goal, and it was Cole Caulfield, who is maybe their best player overall. The second one was a junky goal where Thompson was out of position. It almost looked like his own players might have messed him up too. Like, I think it was Dowd or McMichael that might have made contact with their own goalie, screwed him up. And it was Suzuki that scored, one of their other best players. So Montreal's 2 best players essentially scored in the last 10 minutes. One of them was on the man advantage. The Caps dominated for 50 minutes of that game. Not we're just good, dominated for 50 minutes. I'm not as concerned as I normally would be in years past here. And here's the main part, and you've watched enough hockey to know this. They were so physical with them through those first 50 minutes.
Yeah.
That's where it shows up later on in the series. They had no answer for Tom Wilson. Guys were ducking Tom Wilson. It's the second period of game 1, man. I don't know what was going on there, but I know Marty St. Louis in the locker room had to be pissed that his players 2 periods into the game were scared of number 43. I'm not concerned here. If I can make a comparison, I feel a little bit how when the Caps lost to Vegas in game 1 of the Stanley Cup final. They lost that game, but you knew they were the better team the whole entire team throughout. And what did the Caps do? They won the next 4 and won the Stanley Cup. I compared a little bit. I know it's not the Stanley Cup final. I compared to that, though. Had they lost last night, they played so well, I wasn't really concerned with them in a 7-game series.
All right, last thing on this then. What did you think of the decision to start Thompson in game 1, and how did you think he performed outside of, we've already mentioned, he got way out of position on what was the game-tying goal?
I thought Thompson played well last night. Let me say that. He got out of position, but I actually thought he looked pretty good. I actually thought the decision to start Thompson wasn't Thompson. I thought it was Charlie Lindgren didn't give you a reason to start Charlie Lindgren last night. I think they pretty much went with Lindgren to go. He's the goaltender. We've handed him the big contract. He was really good all year for them. I think they went ahead and said, let's go ahead and start him. And the problem here is, you know how this works too. If Lindgren faltered, well, they'd have to flip back to him at some point. Then does it feel desperate in the series? I think Carberry made the right call here. You go with your number 1 if he's ready to go. He looked very ready to go. He made some big plays last night, big stops last night.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this whole thing was they need to rev back up, and maybe they caught the right opponent here to rev back up.
Yes.
Because if they had caught the wrong opponent, I think we would be nervous. Just flipping a script. Had they gotten what happened to Boston a couple of years ago and got Florida in the first round, wrong team to have as an 8 seed. I think we got the right 8 seed. I hope. I hope. They still blew a 2-goal home lead in the third period. It's not all hunky dory, but they won. And in hockey, winning is everything. Nothing's easy in this sport in the playoffs.
Two things. Montembeault was good, but he's not Henrik Lundqvist, right? So they're going to be okay against him. That's where Montreal, it's going to dagger them, is their goaltender's not elite. If he was, I'd be very, very worried. So that's part 1 here. Part 2 is they don't have Alexi Protas. He's a 30-goal scorer. He's a big, big body. That's the perfect playoff player for them. They won without him anyways. And the guy that replaced him up on the top line or on the top 6 was Anthony Beauvillier, and he scored last night, actually. So this is the other thing. They have one more recruit kind of ready to go. And Carberry said if he didn't play last night, he'd probably play tomorrow night. So that's one to watch out for. That's an impact player that they have.
All right. We'll preview game 2 tomorrow. Bram Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.